Good evening, everybody. So we are starting the broadcast now. We hope you're all well and you're keeping safe at the moment. I know it's been particularly tricky. So thank you for joining. My name's Emily Boyce and I'm the Knowledge Exchange Manager in the North region. Also work closely with the BPA with the small scale producer side of work that we, the AHDB do. And I'll be facilitating this evening's meeting. So we are doing an AHDB showcase and then we'll be having an update from the BPA as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So all of the participants, all of you are on mute and you'll be unable to communicate verbally through onto the webinar. The session has started at 7 and we're predicting about 8:15, but we have got to 8:30, so we'll see how good the questions are. The session is being recorded and everybody that's registered will receive a link in a follow-up email 24 to 48 hours once the webinar is finished. It will also be available on various online platforms, so on our website, on the YouTube channel, and also on the BPA website. So don't worry about taking too many notes, you will be able to reference back. For those of you that signed up to the online training record Pig Pro, you're able to log your attendance on there. And then we will be taking questions after each speaker has finished their slot. So there is also a bit of time, we'll have some time at the end for any questions that are outstanding throughout. So if anything pops up, then do just pop it into the questions. So how to ask a question. Step one is, this is how it looks on a laptop. So on a phone it is a question mark. So step one, you've got the arrow there that will expand and you've got a little question tab. If you type your question in there and then hit the send button, then that will go through to myself and Jen, who will be helping you this evening with questions. And as I said, sorry, yeah, it's a question mark on the phone. If you have any problems with audio or visual, then in this tab as well, there's a place that you can find some documents on if you're having any problems with audio or visual. And you can also pop those in the question box as well. So this evening's agenda, we're having an AHDB showcase from Jen Waters, our head of pork. Myself and Marcus are going to be doing a bit on changes to the movement licenses and EAML2 questions. And then Marcus will continue with some conservation breeding plan update for 2021. And then I'll be finishing off with covering the AHDB resources and next meetings that we've got planned. So we're also doing some polls this evening. So this is just to get some feedback on quite specific feedback throughout the evening. So I'm going to do one now. And the first question is, when is the best time of day for us to hold the small scale producer meetings for you? So I will get that up and launched. So you should now see the poll, and I'll give you sort of 30 seconds or so to have a read of the question and just essentially tick your box, and it should submit and come through to us. That's fab, getting some good response there. I'll give it another second. Okay, so the results are here. So we've got a good turnout for the evening, so that's great, and we can look at doing some afternoon pieces as well. Okay, so Jen is going to start us off with the showcase, so I will pass you on, Jen.
Thanks very much, Em. Could you click on for me, please? I can still see the poll.
Sorry, that's my mistake. I've moved on, but the poll hasn't.
Oh, that's fine. You just go back a couple of slides, or just one slide actually. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along tonight and taking the time out of your evening. My name's Jen. I'm the head of Pork Knowledge Exchange at AHDB, which is a completely bizarre title. But what essentially it means is that I have the excellent job of looking after Emily and the team, and we work really hard on making sure that all of the good work that AHDB does gets out to producers. And allows producers to make decisions and help you guys improve your business. I was with BPEX back in the day, and then I came back to AHDB about 18 months ago. And what I've realised is that a lot of people have heard of us, which is fab. A lot of people know bits and bobs about us, but they don't know the scope of all of the things that we do. So I'm just taking a bit of time to go around different producer groups and clubs and wherever I can really, and talk about AHDB, so people can become aware of all of the tools and services that are available to them, and all of the other pieces of work that we do. So there might be some questions here that look a bit like I'm teaching Granny how to suck eggs. But bear with me, hopefully you'll all come away with a bit more knowledge about AHDB and what it's all about. Em, could you click on, please? I guess the first question is, where do we get our money? And we are, as you all will be aware, we are funded through levy payers. So it's a mandatory levy. The levy is taken from producers at the processor level. So if you click onto the next slide, dependent on which sector you're in, the levy is collected in completely different ways, which means that the different 6 sectors of AHDB have different relationships with their levy payers. Some of them don't really know who the levy payers are because they come through the money comes through a third party. Other people have quite close relationships and can identify exactly who their levy payers are. In Pork, we're pretty lucky because it all comes through processors, so we've got that access where we know who our levy payers are. And yes, and the money comes into us. One of the things that I get asked an awful lot is, you know, if the levy comes into us, does it get spent in our sector? And it absolutely does. So if the pork levy comes into pork, we're not going to spend it on potatoes and vice versa. So we've really got to make sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck with the money that comes into us. The levy hasn't actually changed, the individual fee of the levy, for a really long time. But it means that what we want is you guys to be as productive as you can be, because it's on a per head basis. The more productive you are, the more pigs that go through the supply chain, the more levy we get, the more we can help. So it's self-prophecy, if you like. It self-perpetuates, if you like. So it's in our interests to make you guys as profitable as you can, so that we can continue to help you be as profitable as you can, if that makes any sense at all. So that's kind of where the background to the levy and how that all works. Next slide is, so what do we do with it? So we get this levy in every year. It works out at about £11 million. Where does that money go? What do we spend it on? How do we decide what we spend it on? And really, it's in 2 distinct areas with lots of work behind them. If you click onto the next slide, it's all about reputation. So everything that we're doing is about the reputation of the pig industry, either through doing lots of work that helps protect the industry, or through doing lots of work that promotes the industry and ultimately helping with the industry's integrity. So a couple of examples, things that we do to protect are things like the animal health and welfare work that we do, working with the pig health and welfare charters, things that we do to promote all of our work around marketing and export, and all of this ultimately is for the benefit of the industry. Emma, if you wanna click on. So this is another one of these mythbusters that I've been asked whilst I've been working with AHDB, is things like, well, why don't you go to government and tell them? Because we're not a lobby organisation, and ultimately we report into DEFRA. So we are an arm's length government organisation. We are our own organisation, but we report into them. So we can't lobby them. But what we can do, and what we do, is provide scientific evidence. And with that information, we can then advise government and lobby organisations. So there's some good examples of this recently, where there's been lots of talk about Germany and how Germany is looking to ban farrowing crates, and that led to lots of conversations about what would that look like for our industry. And we provided the facts. It wasn't pro or con. It was just the facts of, if we went down either route, these would be the implications. We provided that to the likes of the National Pig Association, who can then take that information, because it's all publicly available, can take that information and use it to lobby government if they wanted to. So everything that we do it's all about transparency. It's all about it being robust, and us being able to prove what we're saying. Em, if you want to click on. So I'll just talk really top line about some of the different things that we do around promoting, and this is really just a taster. So if you hear something you think, oh, that's pretty interesting, then the idea is, if you let Em know, and we can get some of the people that do that in depth to come along and talk to you guys a bit more about what we do. But if we just move on, so the first thing, I'm starting at one end of the world, and I'll work my way back. So I'll start as far away as we can. What we do to promote, we've got a full export team. This includes Holly, who's there on the Asia Pacific team, who lives in China. So we're right across the globe. We've got an Asia Pacific team, a European team, an Americas team. We've got people that work on policy, people that work on getting market access, and these are all about promoting British so that we can export goods into those markets and opening those doors. And this team, they work really closely with our processors. So Jono, who sits on the Asia Pacific team, will work really closely with the likes of Cranswick or Pilgrims or Carroll, and they'll have an export manager as well. And they'll go together to these different countries, working at trade shows or at different events, or getting product out there, or doing videos based in the UK that they can then showcase out there, all about trying to open up those markets. China has been a really positive thing for us over the last few years, but we need to make sure we don't put all our eggs in one basket. So that's why we're working right across the globe. Europe, everything changed on January the 1st, so it's still about maintaining those relationships and working through all of those teething problems that we've had since we've left the EU, hence some of the movement license stuff that we're going to talk about later on. But this is our export team. It's all about helping us with this carcass balance, and getting our product out, and also making sure that product that comes in is appropriate as well. So that's those guys, and they're very, very interesting. Something that's probably a bit more creative is our domestic marketing team, so coming closer to home. This team, a lot of people don't realise, but things like the, if you've seen it, the mixed up midweek perfect pulled pork adverts, they're AHDB. The We Eat Balanced work that was out earlier in this year, that's AHDB as well. And this team works really hard on promoting British within our market and trying to make sure that we're utilising the carcass in the best way that we can. And there's a really good example of that. So, if you just click onto the next slide. Last year, when COVID happened and when the world shut, and people stopped going out to restaurants and stopped going to McDonald's and all those places, the food service market just shut. And that food service market is where the majority of our pork shoulder goes. We had a campaign planned that was around loin medallions, and we realised actually we really didn't need that campaign around loin medallions because they weren't a problem, because a lot more people were eating at home. We really needed a campaign around pork shoulder. And we had a previous campaign, so the pulled pork campaign that we'd run a couple of years before, quickly turned it around and got it back out. And these are the results of the volume of sales during that time. So it was for a 6-week period. The data's at the bottom there, ended 31st of May. And although I can't say 100% hand on heart this is all because of this campaign, the fact that the pork shoulder went up, sales went up 35% during that time, you've got to think that there is a correlation to the marketing that we do. So it just demonstrates that actually, if you're giving out the right message at the right time in the right place, you can help move what's going on, which I think is quite interesting, certainly for you guys, if any of you have got your own farm shops and are selling things as well. So although that was based very top line and looking at households, and we'll do work where we work with retailers and with food service, we've actually got coming soon a pork box scheme and a meat education program, and I think that's going to be coming up at one of your next producer groups, so that keep your eyes peeled for that, because I think that'll be really interesting for the small scale producers that go through your own farm shops maybe. So that's that. And then the other thing that we do, which is all around this promoting, is our market intelligence. So this is about taking all of that data, taking all of that information and putting it into something so you guys can look at it and make business decisions. So we're responsible for producing what the SPP is. So that comes out every week, but we're also responsible for looking at the pork market and on what we think it's going to do, and doing some forecasting and reviewing what has happened and what we think is going to happen. So our market intelligence team are absolute gurus at looking at trends, looking at what's going on, what could potentially go on, horizon scanning. If you're a bit of a data person, they love their data as well, but they translate it into information that is easily accessible and easy to understand. The Pork Talk videos particularly are just really short, snappy little podcasts of just a few minutes, where I think they come out monthly, where they'll talk about what's been going on in the market and what it might mean. And it's always just a really interesting thing. You can get it on your phone to just have a quick listen about, okay, so what's going on in the wider world of the pig industry? Are there any implications for me? So that's a really, really powerful piece of work that we use. And it also includes benchmarking as well. So that's some really good stuff that we're doing. And then if we move on to protect, so this is coming really close to home now, and this is actually looking at, okay, so within the pig industry, what are we doing to protect the pig industry? As you'll all be aware at the moment, and it's certainly been increasing over the last number of years, lots of pressure around eating meat, lots of pressure around different areas of agriculture, Is it appropriate what we're doing? Is it not? Lots of very vocal people putting out negative messaging, and it's really about us looking internally at ourselves and saying, are we doing everything we can to protect what we've got, so that when we are challenged, we can say, actually, you're wrong, and here we can demonstrate it. And again, it comes back to this robust scientific data of being able to demonstrate that we are looking after what we're doing. So there's a couple of different areas really that we focus on when it comes to protect. And there's tools and services available for all producers around those. So there's a big piece of work around animal health and welfare. Obviously, that's going to be huge because it's the right thing to do. It's also a very emotive subject. Big piece of work around the environment. We're getting lots of challenges about, inefficient agriculture, and is meat carbon efficient? Is agriculture killing the planet? All those sorts of things. So actually, we're working with bodies to demonstrate that no, actually, we're reducing our environmental impact. We're working with the likes of the Environment Agency, and we're demonstrating that we're trying to continually improve. And then the third part really is around looking after those people on the farm. So the business, how can we make sure that that business is successful? So it's not the previous view of or the old style view of a farmer just being a farmer. No, a farmer is a business person, and this business person needs to drive their business forward, and they need to do that with their staff. So how can we upskill and develop the staff so that they can be the best they can be? And I know that we did a load of pig principle webinars towards the end of last year that were really well received, and lots of training, and all of this is around helping to protect what we do. Another really good example here actually is around things like the electronic medicine book. So getting a lot of pushback around antibiotic usage and the impact of antimicrobial resistance. The electronic medicine book came in, and we seen a huge reduction in the usage of antibiotics. So when people say that the pig industry are not responsible users of antibiotics, we can actually turn around and say, no, we are, and look, this is how much we've reduced our usage over the last 4 or 5 years. So again, it's demonstrating what the industry, not just AHDB, but what the industry is doing to help protect itself. And then there's all of that information going on, and there's bits of protecting, bits of promoting. We're going globally. We're working right at home. How do we get all of that information out? And this is where the Knowledge Exchange team comes in. So we've got what we call the Farm Excellence Platform. So it's about demonstrating to farmers, quite often through peer-to-peer learning, new ideas, how things can be tried, new innovations, learnings, technical knowledge. And it's largely how we communicate in these four different fields. So we've got strategic farms, and these strategic farms will look at a specific topic. So here the example is precision pig, which is all about data. But the topic might be about tail docking, or it might be about water quality, and it'll be a really technical piece of work, and we'll follow the farmer on a journey, and then we'll communicate that journey out to everybody. There's monitor farms as well, and this is more about a holistic business piece of work. So it's not just looking at one technical area, but it's looking at the full business and saying, okay, let's look at this and find out where we can identify our biggest wastes, the biggest bang for our buck that we can work on improving, and how do we go about doing that? And again, taking people on that journey So warts and all, the producers can say, do you know what, we tried this, it was a complete disaster, but we've learned from it, and now we're going to try this. And it's about sharing all of that knowledge between the producers. Hosting your classic kind of technical events, so these could be conferences, study tours. Pigs Tomorrow is one of the conferences that we're working closely with this year. And then through your pig clubs and your producer groups, just like this one. So small scale producer groups, we've got regional pig clubs that people are welcome along to, and national pig clubs that are starting digitally this year as well, just to try and keep finding different ways to engage with producers, because everybody's different and everybody likes to learn and hear about things in a different way. And I think that's where I end, and now we're moving over onto some more polls, aren't we, Emily? So the next poll that Em's going to release is, when is the best time of year for the small scale producer meetings to take place? Just going to launch that in a second. So you've got two options here. You've got spring and autumn, or you've got throughout the year. We've got 21% of people have voted, 33% of people have voted. We've probably lent towards spring and autumn previously, making assumptions that people don't want to talk in the summer because of harvest. But maybe if we do things in different ways throughout the year, might be fine. 92% of people have voted. So at 96, we can probably close that poll now, Em. I think that's pretty clear that people are keen to hear from us throughout the year, and use this as a time to network and chat with each other and learn. So that's really positive. We can take that away. That's really good. I think we've got one more poll right now, haven't we, Em? So we've got feeding and marketing coming up for the next meeting, and then we've got some other options to go along with that. Which ones would you also like at that point? So health and welfare, something on biosecurity, or something else altogether. And if there is something else altogether, please pop it in the question box so we can take a message on that as well. Get 63% of votes. .96% of votes. I think we're pretty much there. Fab, so that's also pretty clear as well. I would personally argue that biosecurity falls into health and welfare, but that's because I love talking about biosecurity. But absolutely, we can take that away, and we'll have a look at the others as well if you pop those in the comments, and there could be something for the future. And this is where my conversation finishes, but I see I've got some questions in the chat, so I'll come back and answer those. And please, if at any point you've got any further questions, get in touch with me, get in touch with Emily, drop them in the chat. If you think about something later on, you think, oh, I wish I'd asked her that, just get in touch. That's not a problem at all. And I really look forward to seeing you all face to face, hopefully at some point soon, maybe even this year. That would be fab. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Were you going to answer those questions now, sorry, or were we going to go at the end?
I'll answer these ones now. I'll pop them in the chat.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. So we'll move on now. So I've got a piece here with Marcus, as I said, about changes to the movement licenses, and I will go into those. So essentially, we've had a bit of a change to movement licenses. The changes came into play on Monday at 6 o'clock in the evening, and these are around the new questions that have been entered into the licenses that have come from the EU exit. So we had to fit them in. So essentially, we had to make it a little bit cleaner, and so that the layout was a lot clearer to fit those in. And if there are any additional questions after Marcus has gone through them in a bit more detail next, then the help, we've got some help pages on the internet on the EAML2 site, and then we've also got some on our own web pages. And if not, we've got the Bureau service and the Bureau team, who are fantastic and are able to help with any questions or queries that you may have. So I'll pass over to Marcus now.
Thanks, Emily. Could we have the next? Okay, so there were 3 items highlighted on that new license in green. And the first one, the top left of the screen, was this question about a quarterly veterinary statement. And the reason that these questions have come in is that we're no longer part of the single market. We're what's called a third country. And so the European Union has different certification requirements for member states and third countries. So we now have to comply with the requirements for third countries. And one of the things that's in the export certificate for pork to go to Europe is a requirement from third countries like the UK now, is a requirement that the animals, the pigs, have been kept separate from wild cloven hoofed animals, so wild boar essentially. And somehow our big processors that we referred to earlier, like Cranswick and Carrow and Pilgrim, these people are exporting huge quantities of pork to Europe. They need to have some way of tracing this through from the farms, so that the vets who sign the certificates in the abattoirs and in the export processing plants, that they can actually sign this clause that says, yes, the pigs have been kept separate. So these new questions are all about pork that's going to be exported. Now, the small abattoirs that most of BPA members and small-scale producers would be using are not involved in that export trade. So this isn't relevant to what you're doing. This is completely different to the question about controlled housing. So we shouldn't get those two things confused. Controlled housing is part of the public health, the public health part of the certificate, because it's to do with trichinella. This is in the animal health section, and it's to do with separation from wild boar. So the first question that comes up is, do you have this quarterly veterinary statement? And this is part of this process that the big exporters, they're going to have the farmers tell them on each batch of pigs, yes, they've been kept separate from wild boar, but to back that up and for the vets to sign it, they need something more official. So they're asking those farms to also get a statement from their vet that says that the vet is happy that they're doing that as well. So that's all that's about. So when it says that you've got a quarterly vet statement about your husbandry management and biosecurity practices, ticking no to that doesn't in any way imply that you're doing anything wrong and you're not maintaining all the right standards. It's simply to do with this business of pigs being processed for export, that's all. And that takes you through to the next slide, which is the next question that's part of this. This is the one that's actually about the separation from wild animals. It doesn't actually mention this business of the wild animals in the question, but what it's doing is, this is the farmer declaration. So you've got a veterinary declaration, then you've got a farmer declaration. And those two things together mean that we can still carry on exporting pig meat to Europe. Now, a lot of these things are things that we hope will be negotiated away in the future, but for now, that's why they're there. But if you're selling, obviously your pigs are going to a small-scale abattoir and you're getting the carcass back to sell in your farm shop, it's not going for export. So it doesn't make any difference if you tick no to those two boxes. And if you have any problems with your abattoirs about this, then please do let us know, because we have a very good relationship with the organisation that looks after the smaller abattoirs, an organisation called AIMS, and we've been talking to them and to their veterinary advisor, and he's confident that there really isn't an issue for small-scale producers and smaller abattoirs with these two questions. Then on top of that, there's a third part which has also come in. This is to do with ABP, animal byproducts. So hidden away in EU legislation, unfortunately, is something that says that animal byproducts, so that would be beef and bone meal and things like that, not for human consumption, that in order for those to be exported, the animals have to have been resident on the farm of departure for 40 days. Now, in most cases, your pigs will have been on your farm for 40 days before they go to the abattoir. So it almost certainly won't be a problem for you to tick yes to this. But again, the small-scale abattoirs are not involved in this trade. So if you've got any doubts about that, speak to your abattoir, and if there's still a problem, please do let us know, because then we can try to make sure that this doesn't become a problem for anybody, any of the smaller producers, and stop them actually getting their pigs killed. So I'm afraid those are three rather technical issues that we've had to deal with at very short notice. But hopefully that's reassured everybody that by ticking no to those, you shouldn't have any problems.
Yes, yeah, lovely. Thank you ever so much for that, Marcus. It's really good to have that that sort of breakdown of what they really mean and what they're really asking for. So we've got another poll now. I'm just going to quickly butt in before Marcus starts his next part. And the poll is on which of these areas are you most concerned about? And this one again is around making sure that we are covering what you want to hear essentially in these meetings. You've got rising feed prices there, falling pig prices, the price of coal sales, and the threats that come with exotic disease. Give you another couple of seconds. We've won 83%. And of course, we will still be taking feedback. So if concerns aren't on here, then of course you're able to feed those back at any point. I'll close that up now. It's 92%. And there are results there. So there's a clear the prices around feed and the fact that the pig price has fallen. So thank you very much for that feedback. And then Marcus, I will pass back over to you to go through the conservation breeding plan.
Okay, thanks very much, Emily. If I could have the first slide. And so I'm just going to talk briefly about our new conservation plan that's just been published. And we started with AHDB, what's it all about? Well, this is part 2, conservation, what's it all about? And from our point of view, This is essentially our mission statement, and the two key words there at the end, sentiment and charity. So conservation to work for our native breeds has to be based on pigs having a place in farm businesses. Now, they may be smaller farm businesses, but they need to be sustainable, small-scale farm businesses that are part of the rural economy that actually use these native breeds. You as farmers, producers, smallholders, small-scale producers are not going to keep these pigs just out of sentiment and charity alone. They have to be part of some sort of business. So in the end, that's what we've got to build. I have the next slide. And who's involved in this? Well, essentially everybody's involved in this. You've got the breeders who've been doing it for 2 or 3 generations. You've got small producers and new producers coming in who want to buy just a few pigs. But perhaps most important, the consumers. So people who are prepared to actually buy this pork from our native breed pigs, people who'll go the extra mile or pay a little bit more money, make the effort to go to a farm shop. So for the conservation to actually succeed long term, all those people have got to be involved. I have the next slide. And this is, what do we have to do? Well, the first part is to do with what we can do on farm. And one of the things that we really don't have a lot of control over is how many sows and how many boars there are. The number of breeding sows and the size of the herd is in a lot of ways controlled by factors that we have no influence over. So if the economy is very good, the boom period that we had from, say, 2003, 2004 through to the economic crisis in 2009-10 saw numbers going up and up and up and up and up, and that was marvelous. But of course then the banks all went bust and the economy went sour and numbers went down and down and down, and they have been doing that now for quite a few years. So our challenge is not to try and fight against that, because there's not a battle that we can easily win. What we need to make sure is that the population that we have, whether it's big or small, has all the genetic diversity, all the different breeding lines, is as genetically healthy as possible at all times. So if the population goes down, we still maintain this diversity. So if we get another boom, hopefully, then when the population goes up, we'll be building from that same wide base. What we don't want to have is that the population goes down and then we find that we've got a narrower genetic base to rebuild from, because that would be very bad for the health of the pigs in the future. So that's a key part of what we're trying to do in the on-farm program. And to back that up, we need to have a gene bank, because however good we are at trying to keep disease out, it's possible that we could get another outbreak of some sort of exotic disease. Foot and mouth, African swine fever, all these things could hit us again. And so we need to be prepared for that. Now, we hope with all the work that we do on farm that we wouldn't be in a situation where we'd lost all the large black pigs or all the Gloucester old spot pigs, but we might have lost quite a big chunk of the population, and with that, a big chunk of the diversity. So if we've got a range of boars that are frozen, whose semen is frozen in the gene bank, we can use that to rebuild the population and expand the genetics within that. So that's the second key part. And the third part, as I said, is really about getting people to eat the pork, because parts 1 and 2 don't really make any sense unless people are actually buying the pigs that you're producing. So we have to promote this idea of conservation through consumption. And this is quite a difficult thing for people to take on board, especially with all the propaganda about all the bad effects of meat eating. But if we don't eat the animals, farmers won't keep them, and then that will have a negative effect on biodiversity. biodiversity includes farm animals. That's not just me saying that. That's part of the International Convention on Biodiversity that the UK has signed up for. So farm animals are equally as important to biodiversity as bats and badgers and all the other wildlife that that we want to conserve. So, but the only way they will get conserved is if people are going to eat them. So that's where the meat marketing and promotion side of it comes in. Could I have the next slide? So these are the breeds at risk that that we look after at the BPA. Specifically, there's 10 of those. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with all the different breeds there. Can I have the next one? So every year we carry out a survey, and we look at what sort of numbers we have as a starting point. And obviously at the beginning of the pandemic, we were very concerned about what sort of impact this would have on the populations, and we feared the worst. In fact, what happened was that the increased demand for local food, the interest in buying local, supporting local shops and so on, had led actually to a bigger demand for our native breeds, and many of the breeds have seen a turnaround in their fortunes, and the decline has turned into a slight improvement for 2020, or at least halt to the decline. So this was very, very good news as a sort of headline result. However, obviously we have to try and build on that and hope that those people don't just drift back to the supermarkets and continue with that sort of commitment. Can I have the next slide? We talked about breeds at risk. Well, these are the results of the survey, the annual survey, this bloodline survey, as we call it. And this is different from all the other species that produce this sort of data, because these are the actual figures on farm. We count, well, we don't count them, we get the breeders to tell us exactly what they've got in their herd, what's still alive, what's been killed off. And it's quite a big job to get all this information. We have a team of volunteers who help to get all this information in. But we're the only species that does this. All the other figures that are produced are basically estimates, whereas these are real figures. And these figures are used to determine whether the breeds are at risk or not at risk. And that has all kinds of implications for funding, prioritization, what happens during an outbreak of exotic disease, and so on. And the threshold for being a breed at risk is for pigs is to be under 1,500 sows. And you can see there those figures for 2020 for the native breeds at the top of that table. We're nowhere near. We're not even halfway for any of those breeds. So we still have a long way to go in terms of numbers before we could even begin to think they were safe. Could I have the next slide? So this is about our on-farm conservation program. What we've done over the last couple of years is, on the back of collecting this survey information, we're not just asking, have you got 6 pigs or have you got 5 pigs? We're asking specifically, which 5 pigs have you got? Which ones are they? What breed they are, what line they are, what's their parentage, all of that information. And what we're trying to do here is each of the breeds has its own lines, its breeding lines, both sows and boars. So the map that you see on the left-hand side is the map of the lines within the Berkshire breed, where those lines are and which regions have the most lines. And then the map on the right is where the breeders are. And the colours are based on a rainbow scale, so they don't represent specific numbers because different breeds have different numbers of lines. The Berkshires have got 9 sow lines, whereas the Saddlebacks have got more than 20. So they just tell you which are the regions that have got the most lines. And you can see there for the lines, Wales, the central region and the south, they all have all 9 of the sow lines there. Whereas the breeders are concentrated very much in the centre. And what we want to do with this information and the more specific information that's in the published plans is try to turn as much of that map purple as possible, so that if one area gets an outbreak of disease and some of the pigs get lost, that all the lines are still in the other areas. And you can see that Scotland presents quite a challenge. You'll see that if you look at all of these maps for all of the breeds, that Scotland and Northern Ireland are areas that need a lot of development. Could I have the next slide? So each breed then has its own plan, and it has 3 headline targets. This is the for the saddlebacks. So the saddlebacks have got 3 headlines for this year that have been worked out in partnership with the Conservation Committee, the Breeders' Club, breed reps, and so on. And those targets are that they want to improve those the numbers and distribution of those 4 sow lines, the Albus and the Duchess, etc. They want to improve the numbers and distribution of the stockbroker line. These are both on-farm targets. And then they want to get a guardsman boar and put that in the gene bank, because the saddleback, as I said, they've got a lot of boar lines, and we still need 2 or 3 of their lines to go into the gene bank. So the Breeders' Club and the breeders have been putting a program together specifically to breed a guardsman boar to go into the gene bank this year. And each of these are all on the website in the conservation section. And each of the breeds, you can see a link there in that red box, has its own conservation plan, which you can go and look at, and that's got all the details and all the numbers and everything else. So could I have the next slide? So this is about our gene banking. On the left there, you'll see a room with huge, great stainless steel tanks. That's the USDA gene bank in Fort Collins, Colorado. And on the right, you can see the joint venture gene bank that the RBST and the BPA have in Northern Ireland. So again, you can see we've got quite a long way to go to catch up with what they've got. Can I have the next slide? So what we're trying to get in there is we want to have all the boar lines of all of our native breeds in the gene bank. Now, some breeds have more lines, some breeds have less. So what we're looking to do is to have a minimum of 10 boars from each breed, but have all of the lines. So, for example, the Gloucester Old Spots and the Oxford Sandian Blacks, they only have 4 boar lines each, but we still want to have 10 boars, whereas the saddlebacks have 14 boar lines, so we need to have 14 saddleback boars in order to cover all the lines. But we've made quite a lot of progress there over the years, so as you can see that a lot of the breeds still have very few or 0 lines or very few to collect. So it has been a lot of success over the last 3 or 4 years, particularly. Can I have the next slide? We started this in 2001 in response to the foot and mouth outbreak. And since then, we've managed to freeze 6,000 straws of semen from 91 boars. We've invested about £250,000 in this project, and we still need to spend another 50,000 to get it to our first target. That's not a final target, but it's an interim target, and then we can take stock as to what we want to do next. On top of the investment in the actual collection and freezing, we have to buy the tanks. The tanks cost £1,000 each, and they only last 10 years. So you have to keep replacing them all the time, and you have to keep filling them up with liquid nitrogen every 3 months because it evaporates. And we're very lucky that we got a grant from AHDB. They gave us 6 new tanks, which is a fantastic thing for us. So thank you very much for that. But you can see it's a huge financial commitment, and it's open-ended. There's no point in having a gene bank if you can't pay for it for an indefinite amount of time, effectively. So what we're trying to do is work with the National Sheep Association, because they have a big gene bank which was put in place when they were dealing with scrapie and TSE. So it's the National Scrapie Archives, a lot of frozen ram semen in there, which they're paying to look after. The Rare Breed Survival Trust, we're in partnership with them and with the pigs, but they also have sheep, cattle and horses. And we're trying to all work together to put together a national gene bank, which with the new agricultural bill, we hope to be able to go to government and start getting some funding along the same sort of lines that the plant sector get, because plants do get quite a lot of money for their gene banking and we don't get any at the moment. So we're hoping that the new bill will give us an opportunity to apply for some funding to help us with the long-term costs of this project. So the next slide, please. And the final part is this business of getting people to eat the pigs that you're producing. So this concept of conservation through consumption, one of the ways that we promote that is with the Junior Pig Club. So our Junior Pig Club work with a lot of schools. We're part of the school farm network, and we attend their conferences and try to work with as many schools as possible to promote this idea to children that there's a good side to eating meat, because obviously they get a lot of propaganda about how bad it is to eat meat, and we want to just give them a chance to think about, well, actually there's another side to this story. So we want to promote that right at the earliest possible level, really, and then get this message out there that you've got to eat them to save them, with a hashtag like eat them to save them. And we do that with this Pedigree Pork program. And the heart of this Pedigree Pork program is traceability. So if you've got pedigree pigs, then you need to birth notify all of the litters, so that when the animals go for slaughter, you can actually get a certificate to say, yes, this is Berkshire pork, yes, this is Gloucester Old Spot pork, yes, this is Oxford Sandian Black pork, and you've got some evidence to back it up. And that all needs to tie into a promotion program. But unfortunately, national advertising campaigns and so on, like the ones that you saw earlier, that Jen showed us for the pulled pork and so on, they really cost a lot of money. So we're not in a position to be able to have television advertising or anything as grand as that. But we use the resources that we have. We have these stickers that the members of the scheme can put onto their products. We do our best to promote it where we can, and what we need to do is have a bigger and better program for this. And one of the things that we want to do more of this year is talk to you, the producers, and find out how we can do a better job, and in terms of promoting the use of pedigree pork. So those are the three things that I wanted to talk to you about this evening, and just give you a quick rundown on what our conservation program is all about. The individual plans are all on the website, and the next stage, as far as the conservation plans goes, is that we're hoping to have individual breed meetings that will run over the next few months. So a meeting for the saddleback breeders, a meeting for middle white breeders, and that sort of thing. And there'll be meetings similar to this, but probably smaller and sort of more open. We'll be able to discuss face to face. And I do hope that we'll be able to see some of you at those meetings and take those things forward. And we'll also be looking at launching more of a consultation with the producers to find out how we can do more in the sense of promotion of the pedigree pork. So thank you very much for your time this evening. I know it's been a pretty miserable day out there across most of the country, so I'm sure if you've had to go out and feed your pigs and then come in and listen to us, then we very much appreciate it. So thank you very much indeed.
Yes, and thank you ever so much. That's great insight into the work that you've been doing, Marcus. It really is. So I think because of time, we are going to do the questions at the end, and I'll quickly cover my bits now. So I'm just going to do a little piece around AHDB tools and resources that are available to the small scale producer audience. So we've got our knowledge exchange. We've obviously got quite a digital presence at the moment. One of our main really good update is our Pork Weekly, and that's a new e-newsletter that goes out every Friday, containing updates on the AHDB news and market information. We've got the pink pages. That's 3 pages of content that goes into the Pig World magazine, and that's monthly. And then, of course, we've got the Practical Pigs that we have the insert that we do every quarter as well. Work with BPA and feed in, of course, what you'd like to hear. And then we've got the abattoir and meat processor news, and that's a quarterly e-newsletter that is aimed at abattoirs and processors, but we certainly sort of factor in anything that you may need to know from those into our updates across the Pork Weekly and the Practical Pigs as well. And that's just really a couple of screenshots of what they look like. And then also you've got here in the orange bubble there, the keeping in touch form, which is available on our website, and that's just really where you can sort of select what you'd like to hear from us from those resources. And then so the next couple of parts are more to do with sort of legislation essentially, and as Jen covered earlier on, you've got the EMB, the Electronic Medicines Book, and that's all to do with antibiotic usage and making sure that we keep accurate records of that. And then that goes nicely alongside the Pig Hub, which again we covered quite extensively with the questions there, links in with the EML2. And then we've got all of our events that are available online. Obviously at the moment, quite a lot of those have had to go digitally, as we said, and we're hoping that we can get out to you as soon as possible with face-to-face meetings again, but of course keeping with government guidance. And they also, you can use our Pig Pro app, which is a online record essentially, a bit like a CV that they you record where the events that you've been to with us, whether it's digital or face-to-face. And we're now able to link your participation with these clubs as well, which is quite a new concept. So that's really working smarter for us as well. So it's certainly keeping all of it all together essentially. And then the sort of more small scale producer focus pages. You've got the new Pig Keepers Guide on there, along with some information on contingency planning. So if there is a hold up and your pigs aren't going to abattoir when they are, and there is a hold up in the system, it's essentially helping to focus on those areas. We've also got the pork order form, so we've got our signs and resources online that you can order. You've also got access on there to the Code of Practice for the Welfare of Pigs, and that's within the new Pig Keepers Guide and the Pig Veterinary Society Casualty Pig Guide as well. Jen also mentioned earlier on the Principles of Pig Production series. So that was a webinar series that followed the process of the pig, essentially. So from birth right and breeding right through to the finishing stages. And we're hoping this year to add a couple more recordings and webinars to those. So they're always accessible on the web page. And then, of course, you've got the wider AHDB site. So you've got the Smart Pork knowledge pages. There's just an abundance of stuff on there. I don't think that we could quite cover everything that's in those. So they are available for you to look through. So we've also got our podcasts as well on there. So we've got lots of different ways, no matter how you sort of take in information. So this is a bit more, that was all from me, and then we've got one last poll, and we're going to the questions and what the next steps are and the next meetings. So we've got let me just grab it, sorry. And this was just really on how you felt this evening's meeting's gone and the value for yourself, whether you found it excellent, good, fair, poor, or extremely poor. And we're hoping that we're not at the bottom. So we're on 50% now. And these are really sort of essential, the feedback that we get from these. Okay, so we're on 92%, so I'll close that off now. So you've got the results there, and it's fantastic that the majority is in the good and excellent, because that's what we like to see. So hopefully your feedback afterwards will keep that up for us, and we'll keep delivering what you'd like to hear. Okay, so Jen, I will pass over. Oh no, I've skipped a slide. Sorry, Jen. So I'm just quickly before we finish. So the pork map. So this is what the AHDB pork team looks like now. We had a bit of a shuffle around the middle of last year, and so we've now got 2 knowledge exchange relationship managers in the north and the east, and then we've got the knowledge exchange managers, myself, Pat in the south, and Andrew in the east, and we are your go-to for technical resources. So if there is anything that we can help with, then please do not hesitate in giving us a shout. So, and the last thing that we've got, which is really exciting, we had some news from Christine Walsh. She's part of our bureau team. She's working with DEFRA on a project to preserve small abattoirs. So, and this is as part of the Sustainable Food Trust. And as part of that, AHDB are building an interactive map, which will enable producers to enter their postcodes and their radius of how far they're prepared to travel. and that will then provide a list of options for them. So it will be a really great sort of step in the right direction to work in and keeping everybody moving. It will also be, you'll be able to filter on sector as well. So if you do have some sheep, if you do have some cows, you'll be able to filter that as well to which abattoirs will be able to take your produce. So that's really close to being ready, and that will be communicated out via Practical Pigs magazine and online through our various social media channels once it's finished. So that is all from me, and Jen, I can pass on to you for the questions if that's okay.
Thanks, Emily. Marcus, I don't know if you just want to put your camera back on, rather than trying to type out all of the answers to these ones to keep things moving. I'm just going to read out some of the questions to Marcus, and then also it'll mean that if people listen back, they'll be able to hear the responses. So the first question I've got for Marcus is, does the farmer assurance replace the need for the quarterly statement? Cull abattoirs, e.g. Cheels, asked us 2 weeks ago for a quarterly statement to take our pigs there. You're on mute, Marcus, sorry.
It's been designed as a quarterly statement so that if you're part of Red Tractor and Farm Assurance, that it can be signed at the same time. There are already a number of these kind of additional declarations that vets and farmers are signing related to export, to do with exports to China and so on. So it's been designed like that to fit in with the Red Tractor program. If you're not part of Red Tractor and you need to have a quarterly veterinary statement, then you can get a copy of the statement, the template, and you can ask your vet to sign it for you. So you can then tick the box and say, yes, I've got a quarterly veterinary statement.
Thanks, Marcus. Hope that's answered that question.
What we can do is circulate the link to where that statement is. It'll be in the help section of the EML2 site, I think, but we can confirm that.
Yeah, that'll probably be. I imagine that'd be really helpful. The next question is, what happens to livestock markets? Do we need a vet statement?
Livestock markets, you'll be declaring the pigs into the market, and as I understand it at the moment, the market will then, if all the pigs going out have got statements for the that confirm the status, then they'll be able to go on. They'll be able to declare them onto the abattoir. The guidance on this literally came through about 20 minutes before we started this program. So I apologise if I haven't got all the details to hand on the markets, but that's really to do with this 40 days and the animal byproducts. And unfortunately, this is one that was buried deep in the EU regulations that we didn't pick up on straight away. There were a lot of things about 40-day residency for the animals relating to TB and other sorts of diseases, and we dealt with all of those. But this one was hidden away in the byproducts, which is not the thing that we usually look at, I'm afraid.
What we'll do is we'll get clarity on that, and we can share that around as well once there's been time to digest all of the information that's landed with Marcus just before this webinar. Next question for Marcus on gene bank. With most pedigree semen being stored at Deer Park, is this a risk as a single point of failure? Should we be looking to have a secondary backup site elsewhere?
Yeah, top question. Thank you.
Really good question.
I'm embarrassed to not have included that in the presentation. That's you're exactly right. This is a big concern for us, and we've identified a site in Warwickshire, and we already have some of the tanks there, and we also have some old archive semen which was frozen in the 1980s excuse me, using very old-fashioned technology where the semen's frozen in pellets instead of straws. So we already have that site set up and running, and we've started the process of dividing what we have in Northern Ireland into 2 parts, and we'll start bringing that over so that we've got it stored in 2 sites. But yes, a very good question, and thank you for bringing that point out.
Yeah, really good point to make sure that everybody's aware of that. Next question. In the last year, we introduced pedigree large blacks to far north of Scotland. We asked the LB Breeders Club to support the cost of bringing a boar from the south coast, but told no. Our concern is we only have 2 bloodlines in Scotland. I'm not entirely sure what the question is, but I don't know if you have a comment on it, Marcus.
Well, it's a real challenge. You know, all the breeds, all of the native breeds, and to be fair, AHDB doesn't cover Scotland. They have their own levy board called QMS, Quality Meat Scotland. But the BPA does cover the whole of the UK. So I'll explain a bit about this. So all the breeds are facing the same challenge in Scotland, particularly. There's very few. Many of the maps actually are white because there aren't any of the lines in Scotland. And I think that it seems to me that the best approach that we could do would be for as many breeders in Scotland as possible to collaborate so that we could move a series of animals up to Scotland and at the same time move animals back from Scotland. Now, we did this before, the Large Black Breeders Club, who are very proactive in this conservation. They're probably the club that's the most advanced in doing these kind of programs. They did move some gilts that were in Scotland and obviously very unrelated to the rest of the population. They moved them down to the south of England, distributed them round, bred them up with particular boar lines and produced a boar to go over to the gene bank because it was very unrelated to the population. So for that to work, I believe that we need to be doing this as collaborative projects. Now, that may be in England, where you've got a higher density of breeders, it could be 1 or 2 breeds working together. But in Scotland, it's probably going to have to be as many breeds as possible to make it work. But if we can come up with that kind of collaborative scheme, then we should definitely be looking to see how we could do it and support it.
Thanks, Marcus. Thank you. The next question is, I think this is a really interesting question. What methods can I use to ensure that gene diversity is maintained within a breed? Scrutinizing pedigree charts is time consuming, and with the naming standards on, say, Saddleback, it is difficult to find out how diverse my breeding choices are.
So there's several steps that you can take. The first rule of thumb is no common grandparents. So I know that you say looking at pedigrees is hard, but you don't have to go back too far. If you just want to be sure, can I mate these 2 pigs together and will this be acceptable? If you make sure that they haven't got shared grandparents and parents, and that's pretty much a green light. Later this year, we'll be moving onto a new software platform. So the pedigree database that we have at the moment is office-based, and we'll be moving to a cloud-based system sometime later this year. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to develop a tool like that where you could literally just say, I've got these 2 pigs, is this red, green, or amber? If you want to do something more detailed, for example, if you've got a group of large black, you're a large black breeder, and you've got you've got half a dozen sows and you want to buy a new boar, and you've got a choice of 2 boars that you're looking at, and you want to know which one would be best against all of those, then what you can do is speak to, for example, in that case, you'd speak to Janice Wood. She has what we call a kinship program, which uses the information in the BPA database, and she can give you a report that says, you know, this will be the inbreeding outcomes of all of those matings from this boar and from that boar, and then you can compare the two and see which would give you the best result. And you can do that with some of the breeds. We have people in the field who can do it for you, or else you can email the office and I'll do it for you.
Fab, thanks Marcus. That seems like there's lots of different options there, so that's great. I've got a question now about Gloucester Old Spots. We breed Gloucesters from a conservation standpoint. Many other pig breeders say the pork tastes no different. We disagree. It would appear that conservation through consumption needs to promote the better quality of pedigree meat over mixed breed pork. Is this something that BPA intends to do to support the argument of conservation through consumption?
Yes, it's pork like it used to taste. I mean, I think actually we're quite lucky in that there really is a significant difference between pork from traditional native breeds and pork that on the supermarket shelves, and a lot of that's related to the amount of back fat. Mm-hmm. And because there's more fat, it actually costs more to produce. This is something that the customers have to come to terms with. It tastes better because it's got a bit more fat on it, but it costs more to produce the fat. So Gloucester Old Spot is not a brand like Adidas. You can still get the pork made for 2 pence in China. It costs more to produce. That's why it tastes better. There's nothing free in this. You know, the pigs haven't been sort of bred to have the least possible fat, and so they grow slower, take more time to mature, but you know, you do tend to get a slightly better flavour. We have to be careful in that we're not in the business of saying, well, your pork is bad, our pork is good. You know, yeah. There's no way. You saw the numbers there. We can't supply with the native breeds that we have. We can't supply all the pork that's needed for the supermarket shelves of Tesco and Asda. So we don't want to be suggesting that the pork from large-scale commercial producers is no good, but there's a difference, and we'd like you occasionally to come and pay a bit more for it and make the effort to pay that. So it is it's certainly, it has to be promoted on the basis of meat quality. There has been work done in the past. It's quite expensive to do meat quality trials. I don't think there's a lot of value in us trying to prove that Tamworth pork is better than Gloucester pork. You know, we want to conserve all those breeds. Sorry, you saw the numbers there. They're all critically endangered, so you know, we want them all to do well. But you're absolutely right. It is about the flavour, and that's a key message that needs to be promoted.
It's really interesting. So before I joined AHDB, I worked for one of the large processors, and I would regularly have conversations with, you know, some young buck that's just came in and has said, you know what, I want all of the pork that is on all of my shelves to be from a specific rare breed or a pedigree breed. And then I would talk to them firstly about the availability, secondly about the cost, and they couldn't understand the concept of the cost. So it really is about making sure that we are marketing this stuff, marketing this product as a treat, and making sure that we're not just trying to throw as much mud at the wall and seeing what sticks, but it's conscientious, it's considered marketing to get people to buy this, and not as a, I mean, it's never gonna compete with what you're finding on the Tesco shelves, because if you just look at them, they almost look like completely different products. So it's about making sure that you're marketing this product in the right way, and putting all of that to one side. It's completely separate. It's like almost like apples and eggs. So a couple of other questions. I'm not sure if this is meant for AHDB or for BPA actually, but most of your courses seem to run during the day. Do you think that's for you or for me?
I think that's to do with the training courses that are run through Pig Pro, I think.
Okay, right. So it's most of your courses are run through the day. I have a full-time job as well as producing pork. So in the new digital age, are there plans to offer these out of hours? From an AHDB point of view, yes. We've learnt over the last year, certainly, that well, we've had to go digital, and people have had to learn how to do digital, hence us having this meeting right now. We delivered some webinars around the principles of pig production that went down really well, and they're still available. People can look at them at their leisure. But yes, there will be what we're terming a blended approach. So there'll still be face-to-face training, but there will also be an alternative way as well, evenings, logging in, however. So yeah. Another question, is the gene bank genetics available to the public?
No, it's frozen semen, so that's quite a technical process. So the frozen semen in the gene bank is not available for use, but what happens is that we send the boars over to be collected, and then the boars remain in the stud, and they're available for fresh semen. So breeders can ring Deer Park and order doses of fresh semen to be sent to them in the post, and so it's a double win for us, because what we're trying to do in partnership with the RBST and Deer Park is maintain at least one of each of those breeds available for artificial insemination. When this program started in 2001, it wasn't actually about gene banking. It was about making the boars available. Because of movement restrictions during foot and mouth, we were worried that people couldn't move their boars around. So we said, well, if people can't get their sows bred, what's going to happen? If we can get some boars into an AI centre, then we'll be able to supply them with semen. Then the gene banking followed on from there. So at any one time, you should be able to get semen from the boars that will also be in the gene bank, but it'll only be for a limited time. And then the ones that have been frozen, that's basically locked away for future use.
Thanks, Marcus. There's been a follow-up question on that. Actually, I think you've just answered it. Where is the fresh semen available? I think that's just been covered
yes,
there.
It's from Deer Park Pedigree Pigs in Northern Ireland. If you just Google them and it'll come up, and they supply it by post, and you'll be able to get it from them.
Fab. There's still a query around controlled versus non-controlled, but I think again we'll pick that up once we've understood that a bit more and make sure that we can provide the information out to everybody. I
can speak very quickly about that if you like.
Okay. Yeah.
So controlled housing and non-controlled housing is to do with trichinella. There's now that we've got a different deal with Europe, this is going to be enforced more. It's going to be more strictly enforced. So there will be more information coming out about this, and breeders and producers will have to maybe reassess using a risk assessment tool as to whether they can really sign up to, say, controlled or non-controlled. But the testing that's required will still be paid for by the government, so you won't incur extra cost, but there will be some adjustment there. But there will be more information, and we'll certainly cover it in the next meeting.
Fab, thanks, Marcus. We've got a comment here. Cloudlines offer such a service on genetic matching, COI, etc. Are there thoughts to move away from the stale grassroots?
Well, that's not really a subject that I want to get into at the moment. We have our Pedigree database that we use, and we offer a service where people can get this kind of analysis if they need it. So what our plans for the future are, as I've said, we'll be moving to a cloud-based system later in the year, and I'm sure that people will be interested to see how that works when it comes in.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely will. I think those are all of the questions that we've got now. We've got a couple of comments in saying thank you, which is great. Pleased to see some of those, that people have picked some stuff away and are happy with lots of the things that we've spoken about. I don't have anything else now, and there's no more questions for you, Marcus, so we can hand back over to Emily to wrap up.
Lovely, thank you very much. I did just see one comment, Jen, and that was around the specific breeder groups. And I guess once those are up and running, Marcus, they'll be sort of promoted through the Practical Pigs and online, will they?
Yes. As soon as we've got a calendar and dates for those, we'll promote them through our Twitter account, and then in the next issue of Practical Pigs, of course, it's only quarterly, so we'd hope to be doing some of those before the next issue comes out. So if you keep an eye, the BPA Twitter account appears on the front page of the website. So if you don't use Twitter, you can still see that information there as a sort of latest news, and we'll publish it there.
Lovely, perfect, and we'll help push those out through our social media as well. Fab. So yeah, just the usual last slide from me, which is just around sort of next steps. So if you have got any topic requests or any further questions for Jen, myself, for Marcus, then do please get in contact with myself, and I will do my best to answer those queries for you. When it comes to next meetings, we've got the 21st and the 28th of April in the diary, and we're going to be doing some sessions on feeding for efficiency. And then the 9th and the 16th of June, we've got the AHDB Meat Education Programme, which Jen had mentioned earlier on in the session about the new pork box schemes. So we'll be delving into more about those, which we really good and interesting. So that's fab. And then you'll be able to find this recording on the Small Scale Pig Keeping AHDB web pages, and on the BPA the website as well there. And then last, just from me, is the feedback forms that are sent around are really important to us. So please do, I think it's 6 minutes maximum, to fill one in and send them back, just to make sure that we're really hitting the spot with you guys and ladies. So that'd be fab if you could do those. And then you will also receive this webinar in an email after the session's finished, within 24 to 48 hours. So yeah, so thank you ever so much for your time again this evening, and thank you to Jen and Marcus for your presentations, and we will hopefully see you again sooner rather than later. So thank you very much. Take care.
Yes, thanks everybody.